Hey, what's up, guys? Sean here with Blue Ridge Silverhound. A little bit different video today, where we're going to talk about something that has been on my brain here for a little while now, and I'm just now getting it out into the open. Couch Collectibles had done a video here just recently, within the last few days, talking about the importance of copper pennies and how they're going to be something that's going to be pursued once we kind of see the finality of what has been a long storied U.S. program, the Lincoln cents, and the 1 cent denomination in general has been kind of a mainstay, not only in our monetary kind of lineup of money, but all across the globe. You know, the Lincoln cent has been the gold standard, I suppose, of that particular denomination, wherever you're at. It doesn't matter if it's here, over in Europe and Asia. It's like people know the recognizability of the Lincoln cent. So it got me thinking, Couch, Justin, by the way, good looking out, man. Hope all is well. Yeah, give me a call sometime so that way we could, do a collaborative video. I'm sure a few of you might be waiting for something like that. But anyways, it got me to thinking, aside from copper cents, which anything pre 1983 would certainly fall under that. They weigh 3.1 grams. And, that composition's been around for a long, long time. It's just not viable today to produce something like that and keep it cheap enough to where it's worthwhile. We've even seen that the zincans, the copper-plated zincans, are no longer viable, especially when they're costing, almost 4 cents a piece to make. How are we making money here, folks? We're not, all right? And that is ultimately, due to the request of this presidential administration that they're going to ultimately do away with it. Now, what happens beyond this particular presidential, campaign, he has 4 years, the next regime could very well bring it back. I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns here. However, we cannot deny the fact that this has been one of the most beloved coins in collecting. And everybody, and I'm speaking very kind of emotionally about it, because it was Lincoln cents that got me into the hobby. I wanted to pose this question to you guys. If Lincoln cents are no longer being produced and those things go the way of the dinosaur, will we see an uptick of new collectors, or will we see a downtick? Maybe right out of the gate, once things did decide to just stop production. Obviously it's going to make some pretty big waves on social media, in the news. People are going to be talking about it. As of right now, the timeline for what they believe is going to be the end of production of the Lincoln cent is around the first quarter of 2026. Okay, allegedly. What we do know, here's what we do know, and the Federal Reserve had actually made this announcement, and so did the Mint, that they had put in their last final order of the copper-plated zinc planchets. They use a vendor out in Tennessee to fulfill this. And they've been doing that for a number of years now. So contractually, that agreement is going to be coming to an end, effective immediately. And it's probably, the terms of the contract, because a lot of it is duration-based or maybe spend-based. Maybe they're just to the end, and that's why that we haven't seen the end of the Lincoln cent right now, but that there is a point in the future where that is going to happen. Okay, and as of right now, first quarter of 26. Let's talk a little bit about that because it's kind of crazy that first quarter of 2026 is the projected end of the Lincoln Cent production. Um, all in a time where we're going to be celebrating the 250th anniversary of our country, right? You guys remember the bicentennial coins back in 1976? That was the 200th anniversary. Next year is the 250th anniversary. Just as big of a deal as the 200th anniversary. So part of the rollout for this big gala next year was some major redesigns across all the coinage, including the Lincoln Cent, where there's been some talk about, adding in the dual dates, 1776 to 2026, which, I think dual dates on a coin, is symbolic of, the birthplace of our country. It's really cool. It's been like that, especially since 50 years ago, we had that on the Drummer Boy quarter. And we all know, that coin has lived on graciously and still a very popular find and change today. So if we're only going to have a few months worth of production, I guarantee you that we're not going to see a whole lot of brand new 2026 Lincolns with the 250th anniversary designs. Or we may not see any at all. Well, Sean, I thought you said projected that Lincoln Cent production would go away first quarter. There's no guarantee that they're going to actually produce the coins. Would they rather produce just a little bit of it, or would they rather produce a lot of it? Especially given the symbolism of the 250th anniversary. Mint-wise, okay, it may provide a secondary opportunity where these coins will be produced and sold online on their website. That's going to be an extremely large event, and it's also going to be quite frankly, it's going to be anarchy. People are going to be pissed off that they have to spend $74.99 for one roll of 2026 Lincoln Cents direct from the mint. Now, I'm not going to speak for everyone that they'll be quite a bit upset at that price, but you gotta believe that if they were going to save any of these coins, they're just going to have to put the tag of NIFC, which is not intended for circulation. They did that on a few other coins. The presidential dollars, they did it on a few of them. Candy half dollars was the main one that went all the way back to 2002. And those particular coins were just made to be novelty for the most part. You had to go to the Mint website to buy them if you wanted them. I could see the perfect storm and scenario where they're just going to say, you know what, screw the people. We're going to end up cutting, Lincoln Cents out of circulation anyways. Let's go ahead and take full advantage of this. Let's ride this train into the ground, and we're going to just, if people want this and they want to see this happen, they're going to have to buy it from the Mint website. It's going to cause all sorts of chaos, but it's not to say that these things won't be popular over years to come. The only issue I foresee is that a lot of that gets released will be in such new condition that the population, as far as graded high-end specimens are concerned, will be through the roof. The one parody about having coins made for circulation is the coins will circulate, and they'll get banged up and thrown around and this and that. They'll get spent like they normally do in today's society, and that helps contribute to some of the rarity when it comes to grading them. Now, the whole deal of numismatics and coin collecting isn't all about grading, but we cannot ignore the fact that grading has been a huge component to the hobby today. More so today than it was 20 years ago, when it was more or less something that dealers and rich people did. Today, everybody's doing it because there's a lot of carryover from grading sports cards and comic books and Pokemon and all this stuff. So, obviously, we're going to see some sort of weird thing happening when it comes to 2026. That might be the least of our worries. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the other coins that will have an effect as a result of the end of the Lincoln cent. What certain coins or products do we kind of like foresee in this crystal ball that Blue Ridge Silverhound has been floating around here for the last 10 minutes? What particular coins are going to be hit targets? Where are we going to see bigger price movements overall? Okay, where I could tell you not necessarily what we're going to see a lot more price movements is going to be some of the older key dates. Your 1955 double to die obverse, your 1969S double to die obverse, the 1909S VDB, the 1909S plain, the 1914D 31S, 22 plain no mint mark. All of the big coins that today are already expensive to own. I don't think we're going to see kind of a dramatic increase in those particular coins unless some sort of unstable market condition. You can also add in artificial price movements of these based off of groups of people that are trying to buy these coins out. Unless some sort of black swan event like that happen, I don't foresee these particular coins going up, 1% or so. I just don't see it. Where we're going to see the biggest price movements are going to be some of the other things that maybe you and I aren't particularly aware of, but have already been out there. Going back to Couch's video about copper cents, about how, there's going to be a huge run. Okay, number one, I could tell you that as of right now, this is already happening, and it's been happening for about the last couple years. A lot of people have been out there gorging on copper pennies, buying them, online. They've been going to the bank, buying bank boxes, harvesting out all of the copper out of there. They're already doing that today. And for some of you that are, I guess, avid roll hunters, you're out there, you're going to the banks, you're buying rolls of coin, you're already recognizing the fact that there are less copper dated coins pre-1982 today than there ever has been. And I could attest to this because I'm one of those guys that more of a creature of habit because I enjoy hunting through Lincoln cents, that I'm always buying them quite regularly and have been finding I'm not seeing nearly as many copper coins as I used to. It used to be, if you had to go back 10 years, the ratio mix, we used to be like 70-30. Like 70% of like one roll would be zincons, and then the other 30% would be copper. Nowadays, it's more like 85-15. And it's dwindling by the day. My only issue is, in order for the price of these coins to go up, it has nothing to do with the coins or the market for the coins. It's more the market for the copper, right? It has to kind of like follow congruently to all the other commodities that are similar to it. Copper has always been like one of those industrial metals. So we got to look at like things like silver. We got to look at platinum, palladium, things like that. Stuff that has a lot of utilitarian use, above and beyond what the precious metal is. Whereas gold, while you could say, well, they make rings and watches and things like that, they don't make those to such a high degree. There is more rarity in gold, even though I'm kind of like a firm believer that inside the mantle of this crust that we live on Earth, there's quite a bit of gold to go around. Okay, it requires a lot of expensive digging. But anyways, that's a story for another day. But copper has to go up in value for the coins to be worth more. It's not because that we're doing away with Lincoln cents that there's going to be a rise in the copper pennies. That's simply not the case. And the reason, the reason is out there. It's like plain view. The price of copper and the copper pennies has to be the market. It not the coins. The coins have nothing to do with it because the mint had stopped producing copper pennies 43 years ago. So that train has left the station already. So it has nothing to do with the copper pennies. But what I can tell you right now is a lot more people are harvesting these out of the system. They're holding on to them. I had, a lot of copper pennies, and I had sold them all. It was just a great opportunity, and because I sold it for more money than I could possibly ever imagine. I had hundreds of pounds of copper pennies, and I had one client that said, "I'm ready to buy. If you got it, tell me what you got, and then I'll stroke you a check." And that is exactly what happened. So yeah, that is out there, but the price isn't commensurate to what to what a lot of people are saying out there. I'm still selling them for 2.5, 3 cents a piece. It's not going to make me rich right now, and furthermore, we don't know if they're going to allow melting of copper cents. So the whole argument of the copper cents thing, I'm still very 50-50 on. Sure, a lot of people are already starting to move in that direction or hoarding these, and whether it's kind of like a hold kind of pattern or play here that's going on. It's not weird or out of the question that this is happening. It is indeed happening, and I'm telling you for a fact that people are starting to pull these out in great numbers. So as time goes on, as we hit to 2026. Flip of the calendar page. Yes, I am going to tell you there are going to be less copper pennies out there. So here's what I firmly believe are going to be the few things that are going to go up in value, and I've preached at least one of these quite religiously. You know how I tell you about sealed equity and those full $25 bank boxes of just singular date coins? Those are actually going to go up. Right now, they're trading for between $75 to $125. You can pick any date of the last 20 years, and they've all been selling very consistently for that. Now, once we get into 2026, I think there's going to be a little bit of FOMO happening, and that's kind of unfortunate. That's also going to play into the fact that these sealed bank boxes of singular date coins are going to go from maybe 75 to 125 bucks to 150 to 200. Just like that, And that's all part of the sealed equity game. It's going to be FOMO. It's going to be nostalgia. It's going to be, I have to hoard some of these because they're going to be a second tier commodity because, we understand the importance of this one denomination and this coin in our system, in the hobby, in numismatics, just overall general investing sake. So it's quite amazing, quite phenomenal to think the prospects of these, and not only that, if you just have rolls, those are going to go up as well. Right now, they're like $4 to $6 on average for some of the more modern dates. You're going to see pretty good price increases. You probably will end up seeing regularly $8 to $10 per roll, here in the next 12 to 18 months. Another to keep in mind, okay, because rising tides, bring up all the ships. It's not just these modern coins from the turn of the century onward. It's some of the older coins, but not necessarily going back into the wheat cent age. Think about 1960s BU rolls of Lincoln cents right now that are currently trading for between $7 and $15, except for a few kind of outliers, like a 69S roll is very expensive, a 72S roll is very expensive, and a few others. So all of these rolls that we've grown accustomed to paying, kind of in that $7 to $15 range to own, you might as well just do a 2x across the board on every single one of those dates, because I firmly believe those particular rolls are going to get dusted off. They're going to be injected into the marketplace because, again, they're feeding the system. Hey, the big news is the Lincoln Cent is all gone. So we're going to push and promote everything that is associated with Lincoln Cents out there to see what can we squeeze out of it. It just seems very natural that these 1960s, 1970s, you can make the argument that some 1980s dates too, full sealed singular dates of these rolls will also rise. Okay. And then since we're on the subject of copper, we can't forget in 2009, the Mint had thrown us a little bit of a nice gift, right? They had produced at the Mint, the San Francisco Mint, more appropriately, they produced a 4-coin inaugural set for the 100-year anniversary. Guess what? They did all of those in copper. It's a very attractive set. You have the Lincoln birthplace, which is the log cabin. You have the formative years, which is him sitting on a log reading. You have the professional life, and then you have the presidency. All of these coins in that particular set right now that you could buy as cheaply as like $10 a set, man, you might as well add that multiplier right on there. How much it is anybody's guess, but because we're not going to see any sort of other kind of anniversary for the Lincoln Cent, you can't really use 2026 as being the anniversary for the Lincoln Cent. It's the anniversary for our country. But in general, we won't see 150th anniversary program unless the Mint decides to do this one-off thing. But by then, they wouldn't have produced coins for 20 plus years anyways. So how valid and how special those are remains to be seen. But what we do know is that the Mint has all the autonomy in the world to create custom products on their Mint website. Just because the Lincoln Cent disappears from production does not mean that they're not going to be producing some other funky, cash grabby type of product. I would say that is going to be more the case than not. They could do an NIFC release, with the newer dates. From this point forward, they might do it kind of like a satin finish. They're still going to produce, I would say, the proof coins and all of that stuff, And, we're all going to pay the piper because, again, it's more of the fear of missing out. It's the nostalgia of seeing these coins out of circulation. It's like, shoot, it sure would be nice to get some sort of Lincoln Cent with the date 2030 on it, or 2040 or 2050 or some number of that type as time goes on. Where there's going to be an opportunity to make money, you best believe that the Mint is going to be there to somewhat capitalize on it. Aside from that, thinking back as far as the coins that could increase in value. There's a bunch of different ideas of what that could be. There might be a lot of the mainline varieties, like the close AM 92s, that might see a little bit of a price spike after the beginning of next year. 2026 is going to be a very interesting year as we transition away from a coin that we've all known and loved, and has, in some regard, I would say, it has been the most consistently important release every single year, even beating out like the Statehood Quarter series, which some would say was a huge contributor to bringing new collectors into the game. All right. But I think ultimately where a lot of the collectors are coming in, they're transitioning over from the people that are stacking silver and things like that, especially after the recession in 2009 through 2012. Those folks have crossed over into numismatics, and now is more of a natural kind of like move or pivot to that segment of the hobby. So I want to get your thoughts. Do you guys believe that there is any other singular or group of Lincoln Cents that you feel like might be taking off after the end of the Lincoln Cent next year. And I would love to hear everything else that you want to say. You know, we're like an open forum here. You know, again, this is something that's been weighing heavily on my mind, and I was like, you know, I've been way too codependent in this hobby by being kind of like a Lincoln Cent enthusiast, and then now it's going to be gone. It feels like there's a void missing, but at the same time, my love for the coin and the series should strengthen quite a bit more. So, you know, I would say that it's never going to die out. You know, there might be certain aspects where it's going to be harder for me to obtain certain coins. And we'll see. The market tends to play tricks on people. This might be one of those things that either is going to be an obvious, you know, kind of like burner on us, or it's going to be something with a lot of red herring kind of stuff happening to it. Are we just like, you know, are we speculating too hard on it? You know, but, you know, keep in mind, we're only like 6 months away from this becoming a reality. So, want to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys again for tuning in. I'm your host, Sean, with Blue Red Silver Hound. You guys keep on collecting. Take care, guys.